What if two of the most familiar spices in your kitchen were also the subject of modern scientific research? Cloves and cinnamon have been used for generations because of their distinctive flavor, aroma, and traditional uses. But today, scientists are interested in something deeper: the natural compounds inside these plants. Cloves contain eugenol and several other plant compounds that have been studied for antioxidant, antimicrobial, and other biological properties. Cinnamon contains compounds such as cinnamaldehyde and various polyphenols that have also attracted scientific attention. In this video, we're going to explore 10 potential health benefits associated with these two traditional spices. We'll begin with cloves. We'll look at areas including oral health, antioxidant activity, microorganisms, digestive wellness, and inflammation. Then we'll move to cinnamon and explore its relationship with blood sugar, metabolic health, antioxidants, and digestive wellness. But there's one important rule throughout this video: a promising laboratory result is not automatically a proven treatment. So let's separate traditional use from modern scientific evidence and find out what researchers actually say. Let's start with cloves. Cloves are actually dried flower buds from the Syzygium aromaticum tree. Before they become the dark brown spice we know, the buds are harvested while they are still unopened. After drying, they develop their strong aroma and characteristic flavor. One of the most important compounds found in cloves is eugenol. Eugenol is a naturally occurring compound found in clove essential oil and is responsible for much of the spice's distinctive aroma. Researchers have also identified other compounds in cloves, including phenolic compounds, flavonoids, and tannins. This combination makes cloves particularly interesting from a scientific perspective. So, what potential health benefits have researchers been investigating? Let's begin with one of the most well-known connections: oral health. The first area is oral health. Cloves have a long history of traditional use for dental and oral discomfort. Modern research has focused particularly on eugenol, one of the major compounds found in cloves. Eugenol has been used in dentistry in certain dental materials and preparations. Researchers have also studied clove compounds in relation to microorganisms associated with oral health. This is one reason cloves are sometimes discussed in connection with tooth discomfort, oral hygiene, and bad breath. But does that mean cloves can cure a tooth infection or a cavity? Not necessarily. A toothache can have many causes. It could be related to tooth decay, an infection, gum problems, or physical damage. Using a natural ingredient may provide temporary comfort in some traditional contexts, but it does not necessarily remove the underlying problem. So the research surrounding cloves and oral health is interesting, especially because of eugenol. However, persistent tooth pain should be evaluated by a dentist. Cloves can be part of traditional herbal practices, but they should not replace professional dental treatment. The second potential benefit involves antioxidant activity. Cloves contain eugenol and other phenolic compounds that have demonstrated antioxidant properties in laboratory research. Our bodies naturally produce molecules known as free radicals. These molecules are part of normal biological processes, but excessive oxidative activity can contribute to cellular stress. Because of this, scientists have become interested in foods and plants that contain antioxidant compounds. Cloves are particularly interesting because of their relatively rich concentration of certain phenolic substances. Researchers have investigated these compounds to better understand how they interact with oxidative processes. But there is an important limitation. A compound showing antioxidant activity in a laboratory does not automatically mean that eating cloves will prevent a specific disease. For example, cloves should not be described as a cure for heart disease, cancer, or other chronic conditions. Instead, cloves can be considered one food source of naturally occurring antioxidant compounds. And when combined with a varied diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and other plant foods, spices can contribute to overall dietary diversity. The third area of interest is antimicrobial activity. Scientists have studied clove extracts and eugenol in laboratory experiments involving different microorganisms. This is particularly interesting because spices have historically been used in traditional food preparation and preservation. Researchers are trying to understand whether compounds from plants such as cloves can interact with microorganisms in useful ways. Some of this research has involved bacteria and other microorganisms under controlled laboratory conditions. But this does not mean that consuming cloves can cure an infection. For example, a urinary tract infection, respiratory infection, or other bacterial infection may require proper medical diagnosis and treatment. Replacing prescribed treatment with a homemade herbal preparation could allow an infection to become more serious. So when we say cloves have antimicrobial potential, we're talking about a research finding, not a replacement for antibiotics or medical treatment. The scientific value of this research is that it helps researchers understand what compounds such as eugenol might be capable of under controlled conditions. The fourth area is digestive wellness. Cloves have traditionally been included in foods and warm beverages associated with digestion. Their strong aroma and warming flavor have made them a popular ingredient in many traditional preparations. Researchers have also investigated various compounds from cloves for their biological effects. However, evidence for using cloves to treat specific digestive diseases in humans is still limited. This distinction matters. Occasional digestive discomfort is very different from a diagnosed condition such as an ulcer, inflammatory bowel disease, or a gastrointestinal infection. So while cloves may be used traditionally as part of a digestive drink or meal, they should not be presented as a cure for digestive disease. If digestive symptoms are persistent, severe, or unusual, the underlying cause should be properly evaluated. In other words, cloves may be an interesting traditional ingredient for digestive wellness, but medical conditions require medical attention. The fifth area is inflammation research. Compounds found in cloves, especially eugenol, have been studied for their potential interactions with biological pathways involved in inflammation. This is interesting because inflammation is involved in many different processes throughout the body. However, inflammation itself is not always harmful. It is also an important part of the body's normal response to injury and infection. Scientists are therefore interested in understanding whether certain compounds can influence specific inflammatory pathways. Laboratory studies involving clove compounds have produced interesting results. But that does not mean cloves can cure inflammatory diseases. Conditions such as arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, or other chronic inflammatory disorders require proper medical evaluation. So, the responsible way to describe the evidence is this. Clove compounds have shown interesting biological activity in experimental research, but more human research is needed before making strong health claims. So, can cloves actually treat the conditions we've discussed? The answer requires some nuance. Cloves contain compounds that have been studied for oral health, antioxidant activity, antimicrobial effects, digestive wellness, and inflammation-related pathways. But the evidence does not mean that whole cloves can cure these diseases. There's also an important difference between using a small amount of cloves in food and using concentrated clove oil or high-dose extracts. Essential oils are much more concentrated than culinary spices. That's why herbal products should always be used according to appropriate guidance. If you have a medical condition, take medication, or are considering concentrated herbal products, it's a good idea to speak with a qualified healthcare professional. The goal isn't to avoid natural products. The goal is to use them responsibly. Now, let's move to our second spice, cinnamon. Now let's turn our attention to cinnamon. Cinnamon comes from the inner bark of trees belonging to the Cinnamomum genus. The bark is harvested, processed, and dried before becoming the cinnamon sticks or powder that we commonly use. Two types often discussed are Ceylon cinnamon and Cassia cinnamon. They have different chemical compositions. One important difference is their coumarin content. Cassia cinnamon generally contains more coumarin than Ceylon cinnamon. Cinnamon also contains cinnamaldehyde, which gives it its distinctive smell and flavor. These compounds are among the reasons researchers have become interested in cinnamon. And one of the biggest areas of research involves blood sugar. One of the most widely discussed potential benefits of cinnamon is its relationship with blood sugar. Researchers have investigated whether cinnamon may influence glucose metabolism and insulin-related processes. Some studies have reported modest improvements in fasting blood glucose among certain groups of people. This has led to interest in cinnamon as a possible supportive dietary ingredient for metabolic health. But here's the important part. The research is not completely consistent. Different studies have used different types of cinnamon, different amounts, different preparations, and different study durations. The people participating in these studies have also had different health conditions. So can cinnamon cure diabetes? No. Cinnamon should not replace diabetes medication or medical treatment. At most, current research suggests that cinnamon may have modest effects on some blood sugar measurements in certain circumstances. If someone has diabetes, managing the condition involves much more than one spice. Medication when prescribed, physical activity, nutrition, monitoring, and professional medical care all remain important. Cinnamon can be part of the diet. It should not be treated as a cure. Blood sugar is only one part of metabolic health. Researchers have also studied cinnamon in relation to insulin sensitivity, cholesterol, triglycerides, and other metabolic markers. Some research has found potential improvements in certain measurements. Other studies have found little or no significant effect. This is why we should be careful when interpreting headlines that claim cinnamon can fix metabolic problems. Metabolic conditions are complex. They can be influenced by diet, physical activity, sleep, genetics, medications, and many other factors. A single spice cannot replace all of these factors. But cinnamon can still have a practical role. It can add flavor to foods such as oatmeal, fruit, yogurt, and whole grains. And because it contains naturally occurring plant compounds, it can contribute to dietary variety. The potential metabolic effects are still being studied. Cinnamon is also a source of naturally occurring antioxidant compounds. Researchers have studied its polyphenols and other phenolic substances in laboratory experiments. These compounds can interact with oxidative processes and free radicals. This is one reason cinnamon frequently appears in discussions about antioxidant-rich foods and spices. But again, we need to keep the evidence in perspective. Cinnamon is not a proven cure for cancer, heart disease, or other chronic diseases. Laboratory antioxidant activity is an interesting property of the plant. It is not the same as demonstrating that consuming cinnamon prevents a specific disease. The healthiest approach is therefore to include cinnamon as one small component of a varied diet rather than treating it as a medicine. Cinnamon has also been traditionally used in foods and beverages associated with digestive comfort. Its warm flavor makes it a common ingredient in traditional preparations. Some experimental research has explored cinnamon compounds in relation to gastrointestinal processes. But once again, this does not mean cinnamon can cure digestive diseases. For example, conditions such as ulcers, gastrointestinal infections, or inflammatory bowel disease require appropriate diagnosis and treatment. Cinnamon can be included in food as a flavorful spice. But persistent digestive symptoms should not simply be covered up with herbal remedies. If symptoms continue, the more important question is, what is causing them? That is where professional medical evaluation becomes important. Our final benefit is simple but practical. Cinnamon can make nutritious foods taste better. Its naturally sweet and warm aroma works well with oatmeal, fruit, yogurt, smoothies, and whole grain dishes. This means cinnamon can help add variety to meals without needing to rely entirely on added sugar for flavor. It doesn't have to be considered medicine. It can simply be a useful culinary spice that also contains naturally occurring plant compounds. And that may actually be the most realistic way to include many herbs and spices in our daily lives. Instead of looking for one ingredient that can solve every health problem, we can use a variety of plant foods and spices as part of a balanced eating pattern. Before we finish, let's talk about safety. Cinnamon is commonly used as a culinary spice, but not all cinnamon products are identical. Cassia cinnamon generally contains higher amounts of coumarin than Ceylon cinnamon. High and prolonged exposure to coumarin can be a concern, particularly for the liver. This doesn't mean that normal culinary use of cinnamon should be considered dangerous. It simply means that excessive or concentrated use deserves more caution. The same principle applies to herbal supplements. More is not automatically better. If you're taking medication, managing a medical condition, or considering concentrated herbal products, talk to a qualified healthcare professional. Herbal ingredients can be interesting additions to a healthy lifestyle, but they should never be used as a reason to delay appropriate medical care. So, can cloves and cinnamon actually cure the conditions we've discussed? The responsible answer is no, not in the way online health claims sometimes suggest. Cloves contain compounds that have demonstrated interesting properties in laboratory and some applied research. Cinnamon has also shown promising results in certain areas, particularly in research involving blood sugar and metabolic health. But promising does not mean proven cure. If you have diabetes, cinnamon should not replace your prescribed treatment. If you have persistent tooth pain, cloves should not replace a dental examination. If you have an infection, spices should not replace appropriate medical treatment. And if you have persistent digestive or inflammatory symptoms, the underlying condition should be properly evaluated. Natural remedies can have interesting properties, but professional medical care remains important when a real health condition is involved. Think of herbs and spices as potential supporters of a healthy lifestyle, not automatic replacements for medicine. Cloves and cinnamon have something in common. Both are traditional spices with a surprisingly complex chemistry. Cloves are particularly known for eugenol and have been studied for oral health, antioxidant activity, antimicrobial properties, digestive wellness, and inflammation-related processes. Cinnamon contains compounds such as cinnamaldehyde and polyphenols and has been investigated for blood sugar, metabolic health, antioxidant activity, and digestive wellness. Some of the findings are promising. Some remain uncertain, and some areas still require much more human research. That's exactly why we should be careful with the word cure. Instead of asking whether one herb can cure every problem, a better question is, what does the evidence actually tell us? That approach allows us to appreciate traditional herbal knowledge while still respecting modern scientific evidence. From traditional kitchens to modern laboratories, cloves and cinnamon continue to attract scientific curiosity. They may offer useful plant compounds. They may have potential health-related properties. And researchers will continue investigating what those properties actually mean for human health. But remember, natural doesn't automatically mean risk-free. And promising research doesn't automatically mean proven treatment. Enjoy these spices as part of a varied and balanced diet, and if you are dealing with a medical condition, speak with a qualified healthcare professional before using herbal products as treatment. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more evidence-based herbal content. And let us know which herb or spice you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.